Well, good morning, church. What a beautiful day to be in God's house together today. I don't know if you realize, but what we just witnessed here this morning is absolutely not normal in the best way possible. We have an incredible group of children in our church, and doesn't that just make you happy? Like, there is something special about that. That's so incredible. And so right now, another one of the groups that we absolutely love is our youth group, and they're going to head down to their class, the middle school group. And so can we make them feel loved as they head out today? I see lots of members of Heidi Holton's family here this morning, and we got news early Saturday that she had passed away early Saturday morning. And so we pray with you. We bless you guys today. We appreciate you being here. And such a sweet lady, such a beautiful member of our church. And so we're thankful that you're here, and we'll be praying for you as a church. Today we are continuing a conversation just for a few minutes this morning that we've been having about Christmas. And we've been talking about the Christmas season, all the beautiful things, the joy that comes with Christmas time, all the things that we love about it. There's something special about the Christmas season, all the plays, seeing the kids do all these incredible things, the joy on children's faces as they open things, it's just incredible. There's something so special about all of those things. Last week here at church, we covered a few important things about communication when we're talking about gifts, and some of the gifts that are really social cues, or they share something important about what the giver is trying to communicate. If somebody offers you a stick of gum or a breath mint, just take it, okay? That's kind of the goal, all right? If one of your best friends comes up to you and they say, hey, I've got a gift for you, and you unwrap it, and it is a book that says how to be a better friend. You know, there are cues written there. There are things trying to be communicated with some of the gifts. In a very similar way, what we've been focusing on this last week and this week are gifts that were given to Jesus that communicate a very important message. It's often when we give gifts, it's an opportunity for us to show appreciation to people around us and to communicate things to the people around us. And the gifts that were given to Jesus when he was born were also communicating some pretty important and powerful messages. They brought Jesus some gifts as a child. Now, if you've looked at a nativity scene or if you've heard the Christmas story before, you'll be familiar with some of the conversation around Jesus and what that looked like. The Bible tells us that this group of people called magi or wise men came and brought him gifts. They delivered gifts to him. Now, in most of our nativity scenes or the pictures that we see three wise men, we see three magi, and realistically, there could have been any amount. We know that there were three gifts and three individual gifts. That's what tells us there were three of them at least, but there could have been a whole lot more, 5, 6, I won't go any further, but there could have been a lot more. There could have been a lot more wise men delivering gifts that day. Wise men, in case you're here and you don't know, wise men isn't just a description about these men who were wise. Now, they needed to have wisdom to perform the roles that they did, but it was actually an official title that they were given. And so this was a very esteemed title. It wasn't a description about who they were per se, but it was a title that they were given. And through that title, they earned what was almost viewed as like a royal status. And so they were like viewed as royalty, very important people, the wise men. They served the king, and they were very esteemed. If you've ever heard the Christmas song, We Three Kings, it's talking about the wise men. Through church tradition, they've been viewed as kings. They were very esteemed. They bring these gifts, and they find out one day that the promised Messiah has been born, and they travel very far. They travel very far to meet Jesus. Now, sometimes we kind of get a picture, and maybe you've seen some pictures of wise men before or what people have depicted, and we kind of view it as these three old guys wandering around through the desert, and they're just sort of traveling through the desert. That's the picture that we get. They're all alone carrying these gifts through the desert. But realistically, when we hear about what happened when the wise men show up, there was probably a lot more involvement from other people going on here. This wouldn't have just been three people sort of wandering around trying to find the Messiah. This would have been a parade of people traveling together. Because of the value of the gifts that they had at the time, there were probably soldiers that were escorting them. So you've got people around protecting these valuable gifts. There were probably pack animals that were coming along with them to carry some of these things. And this was such a grand display, this parade of wise men, all the people that were traveling through the area. It was such a big deal that the Bible tells us this man named King Herod, he was the king at the time, he was greatly disturbed. Like he was incredibly bothered. He sort of looked off in the distance and he saw this massive group of people traveling. He was greatly, deeply disturbed. Their arrival was significant. It sent a huge message, a shockwave through the community that the wise men had traveled here to find the Messiah. Sometimes we forget about the human side of some of these stories. We read these and we forget that we're talking about real people that experienced these things and felt emotions, and there were all of these things involved. And there were people with families that were affected by what was going on. The Bible tells us that King Herod, he was so angry and upset and threatened. His power was threatened so much that when Jesus was born, he commissions the death of all boys 2 years and under. Can you imagine living in a world where there's such a cruel and unusual king like that would command such a horrible thing? And King Herod was a wicked leader just like that, trying to eliminate Jesus, makes a decree like that. He was insecure. He was afraid that he was going to lose his leadership. And that tells us, that's one of the major ways that we kind of understand that at this time, Jesus was probably around 2 years old. So we get the beautiful picture of Jesus in the manger. He's a baby. He's growing up, and around 2 years old, these wise men would have showed up and brought him these special gifts. Matthew 2:11 tells us what the gifts are that they brought him. It says they opened their treasure chests. Now, I've seen it before where they had these tiny little bags, like here's a tiny little gift bag for you, Jesus. But we see they opened their treasure chests, like this is incredible. This would have been insanely valuable, and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, one of these I'm familiar with. I kind of understand. Like most of us in the room, we probably understand what gold is, right? Pretty valuable, easy gift. But as a kid, I could hardly pronounce, let alone understand what the other gifts were. Frankincense and myrrh, what in the world were they bringing Jesus? They did not sound like kids' toys. Come on. What are you taking this little 2-year-old boy? Last week, we talked about the message that was communicated through one of the gifts called myrrh. Myrrh had a few different uses, but the primary use, the primary thing that it was recognized as was an embalming fluid. It was used to create an embalming spice that would be for embalming bodies. That sent a chilling message to realize that Jesus would pay a severe price for the sins of mankind. These gifts that were given to Jesus were not commoners' gifts. I was talking to somebody after service last week. It was fascinating. They told me that some of the people during this time, the soldiers, if they had caught somebody with gold, frankincense, and myrrh, the levels that Jesus' family were given, if they saw that these people had gold, frankincense, or myrrh, they would have immediately arrested them because they knew that it had to be stolen. Commoners would not be carrying. These were so valuable that they would have arrested them and charged them for stealing, even if it was given to them as a gift, because there's no way that somebody that wasn't royalty would be carrying around gifts like this. These gifts communicated an incredible message. And today I want to talk a little bit about what it means that they brought Jesus gold. I just want you to imagine for a minute. And like I said, sometimes I think we forget that these are real people and this really happened. Jesus is a 2-year-old boy. If you know anybody who's 2 years old in your life, imagine them for a moment. Now, are they sitting still for very long? Probably not. We've been through the two-year-old stage a couple of times in my house, and it's a little bit hectic. We've got 2-year-old Jesus, and the Bible tells us that Jesus with his mother, and the wise men come into the house. And the wise men, we are talking about distinguished men, recognized as royalty, very high status. They get down on their knees, and they bow down and worship him. A 2-year-old boy. Can you imagine these distinguished, esteemed men bowing down and worshiping 2-year-old Jesus? They didn't bring him toy cars, or I guess in that time it would have been chariots. They didn't bring him the toys that he would want to play with. They didn't bring him games, but they brought him incredibly valuable gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These men with all the power in the world bowed down in front of Jesus and made a statement about who they believed Jesus to be. The truth is, in our world today, one of the things that we recognize as the highest currency, the thing that we value the most in our area is power. People fight for power. They work for status and power. People strive to gain more and more power. It seems to be something people are always hungry for and searching for. The Nativity shows us that some of the most wealthy and powerful men of the ancient era carved out time in their schedule to travel and bow down to 2-year-old Jesus. Similar to myrrh, gold tells us some very important things about who Jesus is that I want to cover today. The first thing that I want to look at today is that gold really tells us a lot about Jesus' identity, his identity. The Magi were displaying the true identity of Jesus when they brought these gifts. All of the Gospels tell us exactly who Jesus is and why he came and how he showed up. But John 1 tells us a particular powerful way about who Jesus is. And we read this. It says, in the beginning, the Word, and when John was writing this, he was using the Word to describe Jesus. So he's talking about Jesus here. Anytime you see the Word, he's talking about Jesus. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Jesus showed up in a powerful way. Like, we are talking about power. God showed up in power when he arrived here on earth. But the thing is that it wasn't the kind of power that a lot of the people at the time were expecting. It wasn't exactly what people were looking for during that time. The people then, during that ancient era, during that time, they were looking for a Messiah that was going to show up and be their king. They expected that this Messiah would be king, but the way that they defined that, they were looking for a king that was going to be incredibly political. They were looking for a king that was a political king, that he would stand in a political position and make decisions. They were looking for a king that was going to be a military king, that would come and take ground and establish authority. They were looking for somebody who would be powerful, authority-driven, an authoritarian person. They were searching for that. And really, ultimately, when it comes down, it boils down to the bottom line. They were looking for somebody that was going to come and restore Israel to its glory. Did you ever sit around and talk to people about the good old days? You ever been there before? Like, you're talking about, hey, do you remember back when we used to do this, or when that happened, or any of those special moments, right? A lot of the people during Jesus' time, they would have been looking for a Messiah to take them back to the good old days. They would have been sitting around talking about things like, hey, do you remember when King David was a strong military king? Do you remember when he took ground and Israel was this special place? Do you remember that? They would have those conversations. They would talk about King Solomon. Do you remember back in the day, King Solomon, when he was the wealthiest king? Do you remember that? The kind of temple that Solomon was able to create? Israel at this time was a superpower of the Eastern world. And so they were searching for a king that would take them back to that status, to bring them back to those good old days, the glory days. That's what they were searching for in a king. Yet this supernatural king that arrives, King Jesus, he shows up humble and helpless in a manger. Instead of overthrowing nations, he offers himself up to be crucified by one. That's the Messiah that shows up. It was not at all what they expected. I think there's lots of times in our lives that we struggle with expectations and reality. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we're expecting one thing and we get another. Maybe you've visited a fast food joint recently and you've ordered a burger and you've been met with this kind of an expectation and reality. Where it's like, man, I was really hoping for a good meal and here's what I got instead. My kids, they're kind of at that phase where they enjoy playing outside. The snow's been great. We've had a lot of fun trying to build snowmen. And in my head, I kind of create this picture of what this will look like. And it usually winds up a little different than what I see in my head, right? It's like I expected one thing. We actually got another. We've got small kids, and once in a while, if they're sick or something's bothering them, they'll try to come into our bedroom, and once in a while, it'll be like, okay, I'm so tired, just crawl in, and you think that maybe everybody will get a nice, peaceful sleep, right? But usually what winds up happening instead is you get a foot to the forehead. That's, the expectation versus reality. What are we actually chasing after here? Last week at church, I admitted that a lot of times I tend to drift toward online shopping because it's so convenient. It's so easy. But here's what happens is that my wife might request a thing for Christmas, something like this. And has anyone ever heard of Temu before? It's awesome, right? But here's what happens. Expectation, this is the gift that she wanted. And reality, this is the gift that you get when you order online, okay? It's like, man, I thought I was going to get brownie points here, but this is what we landed instead. Expectation, reality. Expectation, reality. We wrestle with this a lot in life. And these are obviously some silly examples, but this happens everywhere. This happens in our marriages. It happens in our friendships. It happens in our careers. The things that we hope are going to happen. I wish this would happen. I want this to happen. But then reality sets in and it changes things. It doesn't always look the same. Everyone know what I'm talking about here? There are times that it just doesn't work out the way that we had hoped it would work out. The same thing happened with Jesus. People had expectations of who Jesus would be, and then reality set in and it changed things. It looked different than what they were expecting. Because of that, there were some people that said that he was just a prophet. They looked at Jesus and said, yeah, he's a prophet, but that's about it. Some people looked at Jesus and they flat out said that he was a liar, that he showed up and there's nothing true that he's doing. It's not good. Some people said he was just a good man. He's just here, but he's not the rescuer that we had pictured in our head. But Christ showed up in humility, but he also carried a majesty with him. He fulfilled a destiny set in motion from the beginning of time. Isaiah 9 prophesied about him. It said, for a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. The passionate commitment of the Lord of heaven's armies will make this happen. Let me tell you today, this little baby in a manger might have looked helpless, but that cry of a newborn baby made all of hell tremble because the king had arrived. They knew that the King of Kings was laying in a manger. Little baby Jesus had arrived. He is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's my God. And when he showed up, when they brought him gifts of gold, this was them showing this is the identity of this little child. This is not just a baby. This is not just a 2-year-old. This is a king. This is a king. And they came to worship him. The second thing that we see by them showing up the way that they did was what they saw as his worth. The gold was a picture of the value that the Magi placed on Jesus. Matthew 2:11 says, they entered the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down to worship him. These powerful men bowed down to worship him. More than just a baby, these distinguished men from powerful nations humbled themselves and bowed down and worship the King of Kings. Revelation 4 tells us the kind of value that Jesus really carries. It says, whenever the living beings give glory and honor and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down and worship the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever. I just imagine as the Magi come and they see this little baby, that they bow down and begin to worship him and give him honor. But what they might not have even fully recognized in that moment was the song of heaven that they were joining into. And every moment, even in this room, when we gather together and worship and sing songs about Jesus and how valuable he is to us, we are joining this song in heaven that sings 24/7. There are angels constantly crying out about how incredible Jesus truly is. It says they lay their crowns before the thrones and say, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things and they exist because you created what you pleased." They bowed down and worshiped him, and they joined into this song of heaven that was talking about how worthy Jesus is to receive our worship. I can just imagine them bowing down on the songs of praise that they might have been singing in this moment as they bring their gifts to Jesus. I remember when I was a kid, when we were growing up in church and my parents would bring us along, we'd fall asleep in the pews and everything. We'd be there so late sometimes, but we would sing this old song. Maybe a few people know it and want to try sing it along with me. I've never done this before. We'll see how it works. But it was this old song. If you know it, join in. Lord, you are more precious than silver. We got a few people. That's great. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares to you. I just imagine the Magi bowing down and singing a song just like that to Jesus, to tell him how worthy he was and nothing they could bring. They brought the most valuable gifts they could, but nothing they brought to Jesus could compare to how worthy he really was. It was just an expression, the best they could do to bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It's all they had. It's all they could do. And they bow down before him and just tell him how worthy he is, a 2-year-old child, how worthy he is. And I wonder sometimes when I think about that, how do we worship Jesus in our lives? Does our worship truly reflect how worthy Jesus is? And for all of us, we have to wrestle through that and ask that question. Worship looks differently and sounds differently for every person. But is our worship actually reflecting how worthy Jesus truly is? Because if Jesus truly is king, and I believe he is, if Jesus truly is king, if his worth truly is this great, then he doesn't deserve just our spare change in our lives. He doesn't just deserve the spare time that we've got or the leftovers that we bring to the table, but he deserves the throne of our lives. He deserves it all. He is the King of glory. He deserves the crown in our lives to crown him King of kings, Lord of lords. The Magi came and they really showed the worth that they had placed in Jesus. And a big thing as they came to Jesus, these men of authority, these men of esteem, these men who were recognized through the nations, as they came and they bowed before this young child, Jesus, this really put into perspective the authority that Jesus has. It showed us a picture of Jesus' authority. Ultimately, gold reminds us of his identity. We know that he is a king because of the gifts that they brought to him, the way that they valued him. It shows us his worth, especially in their lives, what they recognize as the worth of Jesus. And when we recognize him as king, we recognize and realize the authority that Jesus has. Jesus walks the earth, and if you read through the Gospels, you'll see a picture of all the incredible things that Jesus did. The most incredible thing that we read about is that Jesus went to the cross. He was given a criminal's death, and the Bible tells us that he did that to take the sins of the world, which means you and me, to take the sins of you and I to the cross and pay for them once and for all. He went to the cross for us. Why did he do that? Because he loves us. He loves you. God really loves you here today. He loves you. And as he's doing that, we see this picture that 3 days later, it's what we celebrate at Easter time, Jesus rose from that grave. He came back to life. And in Matthew 28, we get this moment when Jesus is talking to people after he's risen from the grave. And he says this, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority. Everyone say all. I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. He's got all authority in heaven and on earth. And so he poses this question. The question for all of us after that is, okay, if Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth, that means he can do anything. He can do anything. He can tell us to go do anything. He can command us to do anything. So what is it that Jesus asks us to do? He's telling us, because I have all authority, he gives us this commission. He says, therefore, go and make disciples of the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this. He's saying you can take this to the bank. You can know this with no question. Be sure of this. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. During this era, when Jesus showed up, and we talked a little bit about what King Herod did and the kind of commands that King Herod made. Kings were authoritarian. Like you didn't question the king. You didn't disagree with the king. You didn't go against his orders. Those kind of things, if you were caught doing those things, that was a fast track to death. You did not question the king. Everybody served the king and his interests. During this time, kings on earth, they would tell people to come and go. The kings would command their subjects. The kings on earth would raise taxes and charge people more. They could create laws and rules people. But when Jesus showed up as King of Kings, when Jesus showed up, he commanded all of creation. He would tell the wind and waves whether to come or go. He was the king of life, and he could raise the dead. He created the laws of physics, and he rules powers and principalities. That is the kind of king that our Jesus is. King of kings, Lord of lords. We can't make the mistake of thinking that he showed up as a baby and that was it for his power. He showed up humble in a manger as a baby, but he holds all power and authority in his hands. That's my king. He was the King of kings. When we talk about him becoming a political leader, that's what people expected. They wanted him to go and be a king. That would have been a step down for Jesus because he already held all authority in his hands. Somebody here today, I just pray. I know there's someone in the room today. I don't know what you've been struggling with and walking through, but I hope that you can take comfort today knowing that Jesus is king. When you are walking through the day-to-day and the difficulties that you face, Jesus is still king. When you feel the sting of death in this life, we can still know that Jesus is king. When we feel like life is giving us everything we ever dreamed of and everything is going well, Jesus is still king. And when we feel like life is leaving us dry, Jesus is still king. No matter what comes our way, we have a king, and Jesus tells us he will be with us always, even to the end of the age. He is with you here today. He walks with you. That is the kind of Jesus, that is the kind of king that Jesus is. He is with you through the highs and lows of this life. He is with you. So today's invitation for all of us is just to remind our hearts who is king. I think that sometimes it's easy for us to get distracted, or we put other things on the throne, or we value other things so highly. There's lots of great parts in life, but we always have to put it through the perspective that Jesus is king, that he holds all things in his hands. Would you stand with me today? We serve a king who holds all authority in his hands. He is King of kings and Lord of lords. In Colossians 1, we get this picture of exactly who Jesus is. As we stand here and as we worship and as we celebrate the goodness of God, this paints a picture for us of this God that we worship. It tells us that Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. For through him, through Jesus, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things that we can see and the things we can't see, such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all creation together. He is wonderful. He is Counselor. He is Mighty God. He is Everlasting Father. He is the Prince of Peace. The government is on his shoulders. He is the King of Kings, and he is the Lord of Lords. That is the God that we worship in this place today. That is the God that we give our all and we lay it before the throne. We say, God, no one else is worthy. God, only you are worthy. God, you deserve all the praise. You deserve all the glory. And we give it to you today. Let's worship him together this morning, church.